Good evening to everyone. Most of you know me because I'm your operations management professor. So here there's 4 clusters of operations management and other members of our community. And it's a real pleasure and an honor to have Frederic Mazzella, founder and CEO of BlaBlaCar, to give a guest lecture for us. So BlaBlaCar, most of you now know the company, is Europe's main ride-sharing platform, has 10 million members, 2 million members traveling per month, more than $100 million in investment. And The Economist has called it the sharing economy's newest star, BlaBlaCar. And so Frederic just arrived hailing from Paris, just in time, took a flight today. And so he'll tell us about the challenges of building an online marketplace for ride sharing, what is the role of trust in building such a marketplace, also how to scale the operations in such a marketplace. So, without further blah blah. Frederic, welcome to the
Thank you very much. It's an honor, actually, to be able to present this company. I've been working on it for 10 years, and it's now growing super fast. We have 220 employees, and we're growing at a rate of about almost 10% per month in the team. And we're operating in 14 countries now. But I guess, who had ever heard of BlaBlaCar before I was coming? Yeah. Where are you from? Europe or? Italy. Okay. Okay. That's why. Because we are not at all present in the US, not even in the Americas. So it may sound something strange to you, but it really, in Europe and in other countries right now, it's really booming. What we do is really exploding. So I have some slides. I'll go for 45 minutes maybe, talking about many topics that I've been dealing with over the past years. And then after, we'll go for some questions, if you have some. And if you don't, then I don't know, we'll go away. So let's start from the beginning. It doesn't work?
Yep.
Yeah. Now it works. Yes. Okay, so the challenge is really to scale up now. It's not a startup anymore, really. It's more of a scale-up. And stay global and consistent. And there are some principles and some things that we've discovered over the years which help us grow further. So first of all, what we do, because maybe some of you are still wondering what we do, we allow drivers to share the cost on their journeys. So we allow drivers who are alone in their car to offer their available seats to passengers who will be able to share the cost and participate in the ride. So it's really, one thing which is really important is that the driver is not making any profit. So we're not at all in a situation where the driver would be doing that for money. The drivers and the passengers are just sharing the cost. And as you can see, we do some marketing because when you're alone in your car, it's all gray and you're not happy and you pay a lot. And someone also told me, and yes, and also you're bald. And then when you share your car, everything is fine. You ride share and you pay much less and you're happy. It's basic marketing, but it works. I have a video which maybe I'll show because it's a video that Deutsche Telekom has been nice enough to produce because they really loved us and they wanted to prove that, to show how they were developing in the sharing economy as well. And they made a really nice video which I'll show you, which explains what we do.
My boyfriend took our car, so I use this app to get me around. I shared a lift into the nearest town with a really fun guy.
Let me try.
My boyfriend took our car, so I use this app to get me around. I shared a lift into the nearest town with a really fun girl, and then later cruised home in a Beetle. Next, I called a ride to see my team play in the cup, and returned as champions. Then at the weekend, I escaped the city. And when my boyfriend got back, you know what? We shared our car too. Join the best 4G network and get instant access to the right car with the right people right now.
So they were kind enough to make this ad for free. So it's good for us. We have some other ads, but this one is more about people. And so this is basically the idea. And what we are building is really a new way to travel for people. We are optimizing the empty space in cars because you know that cars spend 95% of their time parked. And when they are on the road, 4 times out of 5, there's only one person on board, which means we are wasting this resource a lot. The car is really a wasted resource. And so we're optimizing all this, and we've based that both on a travel search engine, of course, to know where the cars are going, but also on a trusted community. And I'll be talking further about building trust in this community because this is front and central in what we do so that people are able to trust each other and go ride together. It's really important. So this is the growth of the community over the past years. So I started in 2004. I spared you this from 2004 to 2009. There was no pikes, don't worry, it was all flat. And at the beginning it was really finding the product market fit. It took a few years to really find out what people were willing to do. So I used to spend like hundreds of phone calls to the first, like the early adopters to know what they wanted. And I used to ride share myself a lot. I still do. It has allowed us, so my CTO is a driver and I'm a passenger, so we were able to build a product as well which we could use, and it helped us a lot in making the best interaction possible for both on mobile and web. We are now in 14 countries. We have offices in 9 countries. We recently opened in India. So we have offices, the headquarters are in Paris, and we have offices in Madrid, Milan, London, Warsaw, Hamburg, Moscow, Istanbul, and more recently New Delhi. So it's now growth. We are in a growth phase. We really have to go get new countries. It's a lot of resources, both locally and also for the headquarters. So we have to structure the team to be able to deliver new countries each time we decide to go somewhere. And today, it's more than 2 million people who travel every month with us, which means, so in Europe we say, so 2 million travelers a month, it's twice as more as the Eurostar, for those of you who are familiar with the Eurostar in Europe. In terms of volume, it's quite, it begins to be significant. And in terms of, so in Europe we count in trains, but here we'll count in airplanes. So 2 million travelers is 5,000 Boeing 747 per month of people traveling with BlaBlaCar. And as you can see from the curves, it seems to be only the beginning. So it's really changing the way people travel. We're also making a difference because we're optimizing the car, so we are reducing the CO2 impact per passenger transported because we have an occupancy rate which is higher than the cars when they're on the road usually. So this ratio is the ratio, 1.7 people per car is the ratio, the intercity ratio of people in the cars, and 2.8 is the ratio we have in our community. We do mainly long-distance ride-sharing, which is why I started with the example of 100 euros split in 4, because the main range for us is in between 100 and 600 kilometers, so that's 60 to 400 miles, roughly. That's the distances on which we operate, so we don't do short distances at all. It's really intercity ride-sharing. It would be to go from here to Boston or something like that, or from him to, I don't know, to Montreal. Maybe Montreal is a bit far, but it's about this kind of distances. So a bit of history. People wonder how it happened. It was just, I've been asked the question about 1,000 times, so I'll explain. Now I have a slide on it. So the idea came when I needed to go back to my home place from Paris at Christmas time, and all the trains were full because I was quite late in booking my train tickets. And then in the end, my little sister came and picked me up in Paris with her car to bring me back to my home place, which is in Vendée, For those of you who know, it's in the west part of France, and it's about 500 kilometers from Paris. And so on the road, I remarked that all the cars were empty, and I knew that all the trains were full. And when the match occurred, that we could match like all those empty cars with people looking for a solution to go around with web and mobiles, I didn't sleep for 72 hours. I was like going to bed, but then thinking, no, it's not possible. It must exist. Someone has done it somewhere, and not really. So in the end, I found out a few weeks after that in Germany they have been doing that for a long time. They had no network at the time, but they had like they had done it the formal way with people on the ground. So you were able to, it was called Mitfahrzentrale. Do we have anyone from Germany here? Yes. So I guess you know Mitfahrzentrale. It's been around for. Have you lived in Germany? Like, yes. So Mitfahrzentrale has been going on for 40 years or something like that. But then it was before the internet, and it was a way for people to get around from city to city, but from a train station to train station. Actually, the drivers would offer their seats, and the passengers would come. But it was totally offline. So that's how it all began, and it's been like ever since I've been doing only this in my life. So I changed everything I was doing to make it so to make this project working. So, but then I went to an MBA in 2007. I did an MBA at INSEAD. So I did go there to learn how to build a company because I had a very technical background before that because I had a Master's of Computer Science at Stanford. So I was able to code myself, which helped a lot in the early days. But then I didn't know how to really build a business. So I went to this business school to learn how to do that. And I remember one of my teachers, when I arrived and I explained him what I was doing, he told me, Fred, you need a business model or you'll die. I was like, okay, so what is a business model? Can you explain me? So actually we tried, in the end I made the business plan and I articulated 6 business models, so I'll just go through them. We've tried 5 business models out of 6. So the first business model, which was the easiest to do, was actually the B2B business model because we were selling licenses to companies who bought the platform for their employees. But it was for short distance ride sharing, more like commute, so to go from home to work in the morning and at night. So it was a different activity from the long-distance ride-sharing, but still we were able to sell the platforms. The problem is that it was scaling linearly, which is a bit boring. And also it was not scalable because all the companies were asking for so many features all the time. They were like, okay, so we pay, so we want this feature. And it was like, in the end, you end up with 200 clients asking for random features, and then it's unmaintainable. So especially because also our activity was not business critical. And when you have an activity which is not business critical, you are not able to charge for real quality because the employers really don't really care. Like the companies don't really care about the quality. They just want the lowest price because it's not business critical. So if you ever want to go for a business and deliver high quality and price this quality, you better go for a business which is business critical for your clients because otherwise, if it's just a nice to have, they'll spend the least they can on the solution, and you'll have to do the same prices as some people who don't deliver quality. And so in the end, if you deliver quality for the same price of that other people deliver bad quality, it doesn't work. So that was the first business model, which we actually closed only 2 months ago. It was a big celebration for us. So we also tried display advertising, but the revenues were really low because our traffic was not targeted enough. It was a low quality perception for the people, and it had not really an added benefit to the service. So we decided to close it as well. We did a premium business model where you actually pay for having extra services on the platform. So it's like the business model of LinkedIn, for example. It's kind of a premium, so you pay for extra services. But for us, we had only 1 member out of 1,000 who would pay. And so we had 2 options. Either we could invent some new features that people would pay for, but it was kind of tough, or we would have lowered the quality of the free product, which we didn't want to do because it's not the way we wanted to grow. So we closed it as well. We did a system which was called Merci, so it was a bit of marketing because Merci means actually in French mise en relation confidentielle et immédiate, which means direct link between people through a phone bridge. So we tried that. It was not really adapted to the expectations of members because it was not always working when you had the voicemail of the person. You had to pay to reach the voicemail because we had to pay to call the phone numbers. Basically, what we remarked is that people didn't really want to display their mobile phone number on the website, so they were giving us fake numbers, which is a big problem when you have to meet someone for a ride share. If you don't have the right phone number, chances are you'll just not ride at all because you will not find them. So we had to find a way that people would give us their right phone numbers, the correct phone numbers. And so we said, okay, we'll hide the phone numbers, but then you will still be reachable through a phone bridge, which we had developed with codes and everything so that you could enter the codes and reach the people. But then it didn't solve the main issues that we were witnessing on the platform when the platform was growing. So when we were reaching more than 500,000, 7,000, 800,000 people, we remarked that some behaviors were kind of not going in the right directions because the passengers would sometimes say, yeah, I'll be here tomorrow at 6:30. And then in the end, more than a third of them wouldn't show up because it was free to book in the cars. So you could say, yeah, I'll be here, but then it doesn't matter. You are not forced to be there. So there was a rating system, but it was not powerful enough to make sure that people would come because when you get people on the phone, you don't have the ratings. You don't see the ratings on your phone when people call you. So some people were able to still book in cars without coming. And then, so when the drivers remarked that, what they did was overbooking. So they began to go for overbooking, making sure, so if they had 3 seats, they would say yes to 4 or 5, just to make sure they would fill up their cars. And so then when the passengers remarked that the drivers were doing overbooking, they decided to book in several cars. They were like, okay, so I'm not sure, because if the driver is full and I need a backup solution. And so all this lack of trust, lack of engagement was leading to some, very vicious circle of people backing up their options. So I think when the passengers as well, I received an email like this one day from the drivers saying, okay, so now I'm sure that some passengers are lying because we are now way above the national statistics of the number of grandmothers who've been dead during the weekend. Because it's always the same reason that passengers give to not come. They say, my grandmother died, I'm sorry. And so it was the excuse. And so in the end, we didn't know how to solve this issue of lack of engagement before the ride with the product. So the only way to do that was actually to go transactional, to have a booking where people book in advance so that you're sure that they'll show up. And so when we established that, we dropped from more than 35% of cancellations to 3%. So we divided by 10 the number of people not showing up. And so we killed completely the overbooking mechanisms and the fact that people were booking in multiple cars and everything. And also we saved some grandmothers, I hope. So in the end, we did the transactional model. It's really scalable. It's fair for all users because you pay as you use. Because there was also this other business model, the monthly fees, which I didn't like because I thought it would be unfair for one-time users because you pay a yearly fee or a monthly fee for using the service only once. And I think it's not really fair. But on the transactional model, it's really good because it scales with volume. It adds the booking security, so the engagement we were lacking. And it also improves a lot the logistics of rides because for the drivers, instead of having 10 or 15 people calling to try to reserve a seat, they only have the bookings from the people who are really coming, so 3 or 4 people, and that's it. So logistically, it's much easier for them. So that's why we switched to this model. Before we had 1 million members, and ever since it's been growing super nice with a very good engagement in the community thanks to this system. So I put here some learnings. Maybe I'll not go through all of them. You can read them. Maybe the most important for me at the beginning, in the early days, was to... It's not a quote from me. It's someone very clever who said that, but I don't remember who. The best marketing is a good product. If you do a good product, people will talk about it, and then you don't have to pay for marketing. And so this has proven really true for us, especially in the early days when some other services were popping up and trying to copy us. In the end, since the market was being created, the people knew where to go because they liked the product the most somewhere. And so all the companies which were trying this development didn't have a lot of money. They weren't funded because there are some stages as well when you grow. Some stages where at the beginning it's kind of a product race. So who has the best product for this activity? And then the real users will go to the best product because they know that they've tried many services and this one is better. So they'll go there and they'll say to everybody that this is the best product. But then when the companies begin to raise capital, it's another game. It becomes to be a capital race. So then you have to raise money as well. Because if you don't, then there is an acceleration of the companies, and even companies with a product which is not completely perfect could go faster thanks to money. But in the early days, the product is really key. So this was also I did a talk the other day where they asked me what was the art. The art of innovation. So I made this cheesy slide, I'm sorry. But so I say, well, the art of innovation is work and creativity. So I'll go through some of the work we did and some of the creative parts that we have developed. So the work, I'll be talking about growth, market, and story. So on the growth part, it's a very simple concept, but the way a startup like us can grow is really by switching the order in which we grow. Because traditional businesses for the maybe past decades were growing like showing their business model and make it viable, go profitable, and then go global, go international. But now, for the past 15, 20 years, especially for the companies in the net and on mobile and all these the new digital economy, you have to go global much faster than that. So that's why companies like this have to raise capital, because as soon as you've shown that you have a viable business model, you have to go global before being profitable, and then profit will be later. So you raise money to finance your growth, and if you don't, some other companies will be doing it, and you'll stay behind. So it's really, I think, what differentiates startups now from traditional businesses a few decades ago. It's really the fact that we go global, even though we are not profitable yet. And so we raise VC capital money because you can't raise debt from the banks because they'll just laugh when they see your numbers. So you have to go with people who trust that this will happen, and that's the VC community. When we go abroad, we analyze the market, of course. So for us, it's the price of the fuel, it's the cost of transportation. So we do all the market research, obviously, before launching in a country. So maybe you may ask yourself why we're not in the US. Does anyone want to answer that question, which I get probably every day? Yes?
For public transport. I read one of your interviews in the past, so
You're cheating. Yeah, that's one of the reasons. The other is that fuel is cheap in the US. You may not think it is, but it is. It's like twice cheaper than it is in Europe, for example. And so price, the fuel is cheap, tolls are free, most of them, which is not the case in many other countries. Plus, the GDP per inhabitant is higher in the US than anywhere else on Earth. So all this together makes it so that an American driver alone in his car feels 3 times less pain than the same European driver alone in his car. So driving a mile in the US, if you compare all the cost plus the fact that the GDP per inhabitant is higher here, to the same mile in France, for example, it's three times cheaper for an American to do this same distance here, which means that an American alone in his car right now is economically equivalent to a European already ride-sharing with 2 other people for him because he's sharing the cost. So then it means if we want to deploy what we have done in other countries here, the drivers will only split 1/3 of what it costs to the other, usually to the other drivers. And so economically, we believe that the incentive is not here yet. That's one reason. And the other one is about the transportations because, the public transit. Because, in New York, it's okay, the public transit is fine, but many cities in the US don't have the same public transit. Whereas in Europe, most big cities have a very good public transit, which means the last mile issue is handled. Whereas in the US, when you want to drive from a city to another, like if you want to drive from San Francisco to Los Angeles and you have 2 passengers to pick up, you'll have to go around the city in the Bay Area. You'll have to go around the city in Los Angeles to drop off your passengers, which means you lose a lot of time. So the incentive for the drivers is even lower because the last mile issue is not solved by the public transit as good as it is in European cities. So we believe this may explain why what we've done hasn't been developed in the US. Some companies have tried because, Lyft, before being called Lyft, it was called Zimride, and they tried exactly the same as what we do. And then they pivoted to what they are doing now, which is different because it's short distance and and the drivers are driving for profit. Because if you do drive for profit, then you find drivers who are incentivized enough to do that. The creativity. So you may ask yourself or not why we're called BlaBlaCar. Does someone knows? No one. You know? Exactly. It's your level of chattiness. So when you register the service, you choose if you are blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. And it says how much you talk. Because it's also a parameter in the car. So we did that because it was a simple brand and it was kind of easy to remember. And it's kind of international, actually, because blah, blah is something that almost everybody says everywhere on Earth. So we had to unify some brands because at the beginning we had different brands. So we unified the brand to be able to grow faster. Because the difficulty when you start in Europe compared to when you start in the US is, of course, the size of the market. When you start in Europe, you have a smaller market. You can get stuck in the middle, actually. If you start from France, let's say, which has 65 million people, and you don't think about internationalizing soon enough, you may get stuck in a small French market with a reasonable size, but then when you want to expand, it's harder because the complexity of growing to a population of 300 or 350 million people in Europe is that you will have to go through 28 borders with 28 different cultures. And so when you want to grow global and to grow a digital company over 28 different cultures, it's much, much, much harder than to grow on the same 300 million size population with one language and one culture like you have in the US. So which can explain why it's harder to start from Europe than it is to start from the US. And since our service hasn't picked up in the US, we are able to do that in Europe. On the expansion models, we have 3 options to expand. So again, this is not rocket science, but it's always good to put that in images so that we remark what we've done. The first option, which we like the most, is the acqui-hire. When we find a local team who's doing ride-sharing, they've been doing ride-sharing for 2 or 3 years, and then we offer them to partner with us to grow faster. It's the best option because then we find a team which knows perfectly the country and the culture, and they are passionate about the product as well. And so we bring them the product, the customer support, and also the brand, and also some money. So for them, it's just like a fundraising, and it goes much, much, much faster because when we find the right people, it's just magic. We've done that in Italy, we've done that in Poland, we've also done that in Russia, and so this is the best solution. Then if we can't find people on the ground, we have another model which we did, for example, for the UK and for Germany. We spin off some people in our teams who have the right culture. So we had 5 people who were Germans in our team when we launched Germany. So they launched Germany as a spin-off. And so this was a real success. And then if we have none of the above, we hire local, but it's like really, really hard. It's really hard. For some countries, we had to go through 800 CVs to find the right person. For example, for Istanbul, for Turkey, it took us months to find the right person. Now we have the right person, but so it's the hardest. You hire a country manager, and then the country manager hires a team, and so on. On the structure, the way we did it, we remarked that at the beginning, when you have only one country, so we started from France, you have obviously all the functions in the company, which are product, tech, customer support, design, data, administration, communication, and marketing. And then for us to expand abroad, it means we build 2 things. Locally, we will do communication and marketing because it's very localized. It depends on the culture, and you have to be very localized in these functions. But then, as soon as you do that, you build internally new departments which are growth and global. And their role is really to make sure of 2 things. The global department is make sure that you grow consistent and that like all the countries are kind of aligned in the message they deliver. And the growth department is in charge of making sure that you don't reproduce the same mistakes over and over again. So if you see a country in which this thing has worked and it's a best practice, and you should say it, like, for example, you've tried something in Italy, it works, and make sure they use it in Russia. And you've tried something in Turkey, it doesn't work, make sure that in Spain they don't use it because we will lose twice the money. So the growth team is really optimizing all the things we try because we do a lot of trial and error all the time. That's the way we grow. We try many, many things. When it doesn't work, we kill it. And when it works, we grow it further. And so once you've done that, once you've structured the company like this, it's easier to grow. Because you can replicate in other countries the same mechanism. So you have a local team which is doing mainly communication and marketing. So for communication marketing, it would be PR, of course, but also community management, and also on the marketing side, it's acquisition marketing. At the beginning, the main obstacle for us is really to explain what we do, because usually now when we arrive in the country, what we do does not exist, and people locally don't believe it will work. So we have to go through journalists to explain what we do and to explain that it will work, just like everywhere else we've tried. And so this takes a lot of time. There is a time of adaptation at the beginning. That's why we need a lot of communication. So why are we trying to go fast? First, there is international competitive pressure. So you need to be first because especially when you're building a marketplace, it's not good to be second on the marketplace because you have marketplace effects. And when people have found what they want somewhere and that they know that this works here and they know that everybody's going to the same marketplace, then everybody's going to the same marketplace and it's over. So you don't want to be second. So you have to make sure you're first in all the countries you go. You want also liquidity and awareness. So liquidity is making sure. This was actually an ad I wanted to do. Well, it's not done, but I wanted to put pictures of the airplane's connection, with a few lines, then the train's connections, and then the ride-sharing connections, because we are really granular. You can now in Europe you can go like pretty much any distance which ranges from 100 to 600 kilometers. You can do it at any time of the day. It's crazy. You find cars all the way going around from any remote place to another. And so what we achieve now is that on some routes we are twice faster than any train connection because we are able to not go through big cities, and we're able to go on the we go through the countryside with the cars, and then it's much faster than going through big cities with trains. So in the connection, this summer I did a rideshare. It took me 2 hours and a half in car, and it was 7 hours with the train to make all the connections. And so the train was like 30 euros, and then the rideshare was 14 euros for 2 hours and a half. So it's 3 times faster, it's twice cheaper. So there's yes. We actually advise a price, but then the drivers are able to make the price higher or lower, depending usually on the quality of the car and on their willingness to fill up the car quickly or not. Because the higher your price, the longer it will take for you to fill up your car, obviously. And so, yeah, it's right now, for example, in France, it's 6 to 7 cents per kilometer. So that would be 6 or 7 cents per mile here. So that's why we're not at all a solution like you may know for the on-demand transport, the taxi-like applications you have here, like Uber and Lyft and everything, because the price is not the same at all. For us, 6 cents per mile. So you see what it means. I mean, you do 10 miles, it's 60 cents. So it's not the same price at all. It's really ride-sharing. And we want awareness as well. That's why we're growing fast, because the brand helps growing faster. And also we want economies of scale. The bigger we will be, the bigger our heart will be, as we say. So how we do, basically it's a lot of execution. We make sure our service is easy to use. We have a nice support because we realize that people really are, the people are evaluating the quality of our service also based on the fact that when they ask a question, they want an answer. If you don't answer to your early customers